that is also here. Hi, Lauren. It's a little
Hi
bit later.
everyone.
It is in the
Yes.
afternoon. We are going to wait like 30 seconds and give everyone a chance to come in before we start the meeting. People start coming in.
Welcome everyone.
It is still early for some, but it is a beautiful morning here. It is nice weather.
We're here in Australia. It's a beautiful spring evening. The sun is shining, the sky is blue.
Awful, you awful woman. Well, shall we get started? I think still some participants will slowly come in. Hi, Jaime. I can see Jaime on the questions and answers.
Great.
Good morning. As I was saying, I'm your host this morning. I'm Marduka Christensen. And welcome to Dr. Lauren Tober. Good morning or good afternoon for you in Australia. I'm giving a small introduction before I can hand it over to you. This is a lecture about the functional analysis of emotions. And then why do we actually have emotions? We think they are quite disturbing and we are almost pushing them to the side. And also nowadays it is positive emotions are good, but negative emotions we are tending not to show. So this is an analysis of if they are friends and allies or designed to guide us through life or intended to make us miserable. Can we use emotions? It is, as I said, very discomfortable, but maybe we can turn it around also into something positive. Then I introduce you, Dr. Lauren Tober, clinical psychologist and senior yoga teacher. Actually quite well known all around the world. You're very modest, but people tend to know you. You're the founder of Awake Psychology, an online Australia-wide psychology practice. You run severely highly acclaimed courses. And your thoughts around happiness is that it is true nature, yoga, gratitude, authenticity, compassion, creativity, and community. It helps us cultivate that happiness. Your work is soulful without being new agey, so grounded, evidence-based, without being too clinical, really authentic, heartfelt, and life-changing. Well, beautiful. And then I can hand it over to you, Lauren.
Thank you. What a beautiful introduction.
Practicalities, questions and answers. You will find that here underneath this screen. I will gather all the questions, give Lauren the chance to talk, and at the end, so that will be around 8:40. Then we will have the chance to ask the questions.
Great, we'll make sure.
But feel free to just put them in the chat. Thank you, Lauren. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for that beautiful introduction. So, sometimes it feels like our emotions are coming to take us on this roller coaster. We can have these huge highs and these huge lows, and sometimes it can feel completely out of control, like we're crazy or that something's wrong with us. Has anybody had this experience before? But what if emotions had a function? What if they're here for a reason? Not as enemies, not coming to make our life miserable and take us on this roller coaster, but as allies or friends. What if our emotions come as messengers? And if our emotions come as messengers, if this hypothesis is true, then our job is not to shoot the messenger. Our job is to listen to the messages that our emotions bring and to try to understand them. So I believe that our emotions are like a GPS navigational system, or like Google Maps. Our emotions come to support us to be happy and healthy. They help us to navigate through this lifetime, coming as friends, as allies, coming to support us to navigate this life. And just like Google Maps or a GPS navigational system, our emotions start to beep when we get off course. Not literally start beeping, of course, but our emotions come, they let us know when we're not on course, when we're not feeling happy or healthy, we're not living the life that we're meant to be living. And our emotions let us know, not because there's something wrong with us, not because there's anything wrong at all, but they're kindly letting us know to help us to redirect and come back on course. But unlike Siri or Google Maps, our emotions don't speak to us in words. Our emotions speak to us as sensation in the body. So you may have noticed that emotions are very somatic, right? We know we're having an emotion by the way that it feels in the body. So, this is different for all of us, right? But there are some common threads with the way that emotion feels in the body, and some of these you might recognize. So, for example, if we're feeling joyful or happy, when I feel joyful and happy, when that lands in my body, my spine feels straight, my chest feels open. There's maybe a smile on my lips, and my eyes are a little bit wider. There's a kind of a lightness, an openness in my step. But when sadness is there, my shoulders come a little bit in. There's maybe some tension in my jaw, maybe between my eyebrows, kind of a heaviness in my body, maybe a heaviness in my belly, this kind of inward focus. This is a kind of sensation that unfolds in my body when sadness is present. And anxiety is often like the heart beating fast, the butterflies in the stomach. Maybe there's like some sweating under the arms or clenching of the jaw or the hands, right? These are fairly universal experiences of sensation that unfolds in the body with emotion, but it's different for all of us. And so that's really important to recognize. But my point here is that emotion doesn't speak to us with words. It doesn't have that vocabulary. Its vocabulary is sensation. So the emotion comes as a messenger. It comes for a reason, and it speaks to us through sensation. But so often we turn away from that rather than towards this experience, and we miss the message. And it makes sense that we do this. These uncomfortable emotions anyway, these challenging emotions can be very uncomfortable. It doesn't feel nice in the body when there's contraction or heaviness or your heart beating fast and butterflies in your stomach. Like it doesn't feel good. It makes sense that we want to turn away or try to change our emotional experience. But when we do that, it's this shooting the messenger. It's not getting the message that our emotion is bringing us. So, it makes a lot of sense that we do it, and yet it's not particularly helpful. And so what we have a tendency to do and I'm sure I'm not the only one that's done this, but what we have a tendency to do when we have an uncomfortable emotion is to frantically do anything we can to suppress it or to change that experience. Now, as human beings, we've got pretty good at doing this, and we can actually spend our whole life trying to change our emotional experience. We can do this through our phones, Instagram, Facebook, just kind of getting stuck into that feed and zoning out with what's going on internally. Maybe we get drunk, or we get high, or we have sex, or we eat food. There's so many different ways that we can suppress our emotions or, take our attention away from it. Even yoga can be a way to take ourselves away from our internal experience. But what if we welcomed our emotions, even just for a moment, and invited them in? If we stop this kind of frantic struggle that we all tend to engage in, and if we let go of some of our avoidance strategies, and we let ourselves feel our emotions, even if it's just for a moment. Now, this is a pretty simple thing to suggest. And chances are you're sitting there thinking, well, I heard this before, that's all well and good. But just because it's a simple suggestion, it doesn't mean that it's easy, because it can be incredibly uncomfortable to sit with our emotions. So I offer this with you. Maybe it's new. Maybe you've heard this a million times before, but I offer you this as an offering to try. Now, there's this beautiful poem that I love called The Guest House by Rumi, and I'd love to read this poem to you because I think this poem really kind of embodies what we're talking about here. And I'm going to read it to you. And I invite you to listen. Your eyes can be open or closed, whatever works for you. And I invite you to listen not just with your ears, but with your entire body. And perhaps this is the first time you've heard this, or perhaps you've heard this many times before, but either way, I invite you to listen as if this is the first time. So here it is. This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still, treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. And perhaps you want to take a moment just to let that poem land. Each has been sent as a guide from beyond. Emotion is a messenger. Emotion comes as this guide. Emotion has a function. And it's our job as human beings to work out what this message is, to do, as we might call it, to do a functional analysis of emotion. Or another way to put that, listen to the message. So I invite you now to take a moment to notice and sense emotion that's present in your body, in your system right now. So it's one thing to talk about this, but let's bring this into the body. Now, we're doing this online. It's very different when we're sitting together, and if we were sitting opposite each other, I'd have a sense of how this is landing with you, but we're not doing this. We're doing it online, and I can't see how this is affecting you. So especially, I invite you, only do this if it feels okay. This is an invitation. It might not be for you today, so you're welcome to listen rather than participate. But if you'd like to, the invitation now is to have your eyes open or closed and we're just going to be here for less than a minute, a short amount of time, noticing the emotion that's showing up for you right now. Maybe it's boredom from listening to this. Maybe it's excitement. Maybe there's some sadness or anxiety. Maybe some tiredness from waking up. Take a moment to drop any agenda or expectation and notice the emotion or multiple emotions that's present for you right now. And as you do so, noticing or sensing how this emotion is playing out as sensation in your body. Just like we're doing like a quick, like a little check-in here. What emotion is present for you? Without judgment, without expectation, and noticing the sensation. Okay, we're going to do a little bit of a longer practice in a moment, but I just wanted to dip our toes in the water there. So now, once we've felt and we've welcomed our emotions, so we've turned towards them rather than away from them like we often do. When we do this, when we feel and welcome our emotions, sometimes insight can arise. Sometimes, an understanding of what the message is. Sometimes it's really obvious. It just kind of comes up and we know immediately, but other times it isn't. And so while we want to do a functional analysis of our emotions to understand the messages that they're bringing, we don't want to do an over-analysis. We don't want to get all caught up in our heads about it. This kind of work rarely benefits from over-analysis and over-thought, but when we open to the possibility of insight arising and we don't force it, sometimes it does. So there isn't a prescription for what each emotion means. Only you are really going to know what this is. So it's not that if the emotion of sadness is here, it means this, or anxiety is here, it means this, or joy is here, it means this. It's not that simple. It's much more nuanced. But these challenging emotions, these uncomfortable emotions that we all experience, because we all experience a full range of emotion, having a full range of emotion is actually a really important part of this human experience that we're living. These uncomfortable emotions that come up could be coming up for a variety of reasons. So it might be that you're not getting enough sleep. I know when I get less than 8 hours sleep, I start to feel a bit grumpy and irritated. I don't cope with kind of the ups and downs of life as well as I would otherwise. So, that might be the message, that I'm not getting enough sleep. This seems to me to be an epidemic in our society, that we're all not getting enough sleep. We're all not prioritizing our sleep. And that's actually a big part of what I talk to my clients about in my clinical practice here in Mullumbimby in Australia. So maybe it's you're not getting enough sleep. Maybe you're drinking too much coffee. The somatic experience for many people of coffee is very similar to anxiety. And so sometimes, not always, but sometimes anxiety can be significantly reduced by cutting out coffee. So maybe the message is around sleep. Maybe the message is around the coffee that you're drinking. Or maybe it's because you're in an abusive relationship and it's time to do something about that. Or maybe you're in a job that from the outside looks like a great job and it's paying the bills, but you hate it, or it's not lighting you up. It's not kind of meeting your creative need or whatever it is. So on paper it looks good, but there's something in you that wants more, something different. Or maybe you've been putting off a difficult conversation that really needs to be had, or maybe there's some trauma from your past that's playing out in the present, and it might be helpful to seek some support around that to move through it. Or maybe it's time to look at some forgiveness or some self-compassion. The list is endless and it's not prescriptive. However, when we're willing to be present with our emotions, when we turn towards them rather than away from them, insight can arise. Sometimes there's an action that can be taken. Sometimes simply being present with our emotion is all that's required. So often we're frantically trying to change our emotion, and the message, maybe it's time to welcome your emotion rather than suppressing it or changing it. So your job, our job as human beings is to listen and to do our best to understand. So I wanted to give us the opportunity to practice this a little bit now. So again, this is completely optional. You're welcome to listen rather than engage. You're welcome to switch off if this doesn't feel right for you today. You're welcome to join in. And if it feels too much at any time, you're in the driver's seat. You can open your eyes. You can walk away. You're completely in the driver's seat here, okay? If you'd like to join me, this will be about maybe 10, 15 minutes. If you'd like to join me, I invite you to make your way into a comfortable position. So if you're sitting in a chair, maybe you want to uncross your legs like I'm doing now and place them flat on the floor, or maybe you're on your couch and you want to lie back and get really comfortable. There's no right or wrong way to position your body. My only suggestion is you make yourself comfortable, whatever that means for you. Eyes can be open or closed. Again, there's no right or wrong way here. And as you're resting here, perhaps sense the ground underneath your body, sensing whatever surface your body is resting on, through your feet, through your body, your back, whatever it is. sensing, feeling yourself connected to the ground, to the earth below you. And then perhaps sensing your breath. So I'm not trying to change your breath in any way, not trying to make anything in particular happen, but sensing your breath just as it is. Maybe the sensation of the breath is strongest in the nostrils, in the throat, in the chest, or the belly. Without judgment, can you sense your breath? Can you be present with your breath just as it is? Show up for your breath just as it is, without trying to fix it or change it or do any fancy breathing technique. Sensing the breath, and perhaps even noticing the human tendency for the breath to change when we start to notice it. Maybe that's your experience, maybe it isn't. And then I invite you now to sense your left hand. So instead of looking with your eyes or thinking with your mind, I invite you to sense your left hand with your left hand. So dropping out of the thinking mind and sensing the left hand, feeling your way from the inside, the sensation in the left hand, or perhaps the absence of sensation, sensing whatever's present. And then sensing the right hand. And again, feeling your way, not using your eyes or thinking with your mind, but sensing from the inside, sensing your right hand with your right hand. Dropping out of the thinking mind, sensing with the body. And then sensing both hands at the same time. Again, not thinking. Dropping out of the thinking mind, sensing both hands simultaneously. And then, if it feels right for you, sensing emotion. So again, just like we did before, noticing, sensing any emotion that's present without judgment, without trying to make anything in particular happen. Perhaps there's no emotion present and you can sense the absence of emotion. Perhaps there's multiple emotions and you might choose to focus on one, or you might sense both, or however many they are at the same time. Hold that container to be able to welcome them all in. And as you're noticing or sensing this emotion, sensing how it feels in the body, how this emotion unfolds as sensation in the body. Allowing it to be exactly as it is, but knowing that at any time you can open your eyes if this feels too much. You're in the driver's seat. This sensation in your body and the accompanying emotion, it might stay the same, it might change, it might blossom and get bigger, it might dissolve and move away, it might morph into something else. Can you welcome whatever's there? Be present to the unfolding emotion and sensation in your body as the witness, as the one who's sensing emotion. Allowing it to come and go, to fluctuate or to stay the same. Allowing it to be exactly as it is. And, without going into the mind, so staying in the body, can you ask yourself, maybe ask this question and just see what arises. What is the message that this emotion is bringing? What is it telling you? And if there's no emotion, or there's no answer, there's no response, that's perfect. It's all welcome. But let's ask this question. Let's see if something arises, if something spontaneously bubbles up inside of you. What's the message that this emotion is bringing? What is it telling you? And perhaps also inquiring if there's an action for you to take. Something to do or something not to do. Something you need to understand or know without force. Simply opening to the possibility. And if it feels right for you, coming back to the emotion and the sensation and noticing, is it the same or has it changed through this process? Is there a different emotion present? Being curious to your unfolding experience. I like to think of this as a little bit like scuba diving. I don't know if you've been scuba diving, but you go under the water and there's this whole other world under there. The water and the coral and the fish. To me, this process is like that. We go in and we look at our internal landscape, sensing our emotions and the sensation that unfolds with them. So continuing to be curious about our unfolding internal landscape without judgment and willingness to be present with it unfolding just as it is. And perhaps inquiring again, is there a message? Anything that needs to be listened to be acted upon. And you don't have to do it, but can you listen? Opening to the possibility. And then letting it go. And again, sensing your breath. Noticing the way the breath moves in the body. Nostrils, throat, chest, or the belly. I'm not trying to make anything in particular happen. Sensing it just as it is. And perhaps it's the same as it was, the breath at the beginning of the practice, or perhaps it's different. Notice, no judgment, curiosity. And before we finish this up, perhaps asking yourself if there's something that you'd like to take away from this practice today. We've sensed the body and the breath. We've sensed the emotions, and we've asked if there's a message, any action that needs to take. After this practice that we've done together here, I wonder if there's something that you would like to take from this and go and do. Perhaps something bubbled up in the practice that's very clear for you to take action on. Perhaps it's, well, I want to try this again another day. Or I want to try this on a day when there's a lot of emotion coming up and put it into action. Or perhaps, yeah, no, this is not for me, but I know another practice that I could do instead. Whatever it is. Noticing, getting clear on something you'd like to take away from this short practice. And maybe maybe even imagining yourself, visualizing yourself doing this. Visualizing yourself calling that friend, or going to bed earlier, or signing up to that meditation class, or whatever it is for you. Now staying with this visualization as long as you like. And when you feel ready, let's sense the hands again, sensing the left hand. Sensing the left hand with the left hand. Sensing with the body. Sensing the right hand. Both hands at the same time. Wherever you are in the world and whatever position you're resting in, sensing the ground underneath your body. And as we all do this, as we sense the ground through the floor, through the earth, through the center of the earth, know that we're all connected. That we're all sitting here and we're doing this exercise, this practice, this meditation together. And that we're all connected. You're not on your own with this. We're all here. Know that you can repeat this practice anytime you like. It's always there for you. It's always accessible. All you need to do is have the intention and create some space for it. And then when you feel ready, opening your eyes if they're not already open, or perhaps you'd like to sit here a little longer and rest in that. Whatever works for you. Welcome back. So I hope that this practice gave you a taste, gave you an opportunity to not just hear about this stuff as an intellectual exercise, but to really embody it, to bring it from a cognitive understanding to an embodied knowing. And I think often this is what's lacking in our world, is that so often we get things intellectually, but to bring them into our body and to get this deeper knowing is a big jump to take. And so I hope this practice was really supported that to happen for you. So after today, if this was interesting for you, and I hope that it was in some way, that you take some time to reflect on your experience, perhaps journal about it, give yourself some time to consider it, talk to a friend about it. And, perhaps there is some action for you to take, this action that you came up with in the practice. Maybe there's something there for you to take and run with. And, perhaps nothing came up, and that's perfect as well. And if that was the case, I invite you to be willing to be present with your emotional experience and be open to the possibility of emotion coming as a messenger. So perhaps nothing kind of bubbled up today, but perhaps if you do this another day, it might. So maybe you want to take it and continue to explore that in your own time. So I'd be interested now hearing about anybody's experience in that practice. So whether something that unfolded for you in the practice in terms of sensation or emotion, or an action that came up for you to take as a result of doing that work. Did anyone have an experience that they would be interested in sharing, or even a question about what we've been speaking about?
Denise is saying, thank you for the practice. I do mediation regularly and yoga also, but I have noticed that I have difficulties with naming emotions, and often I do feel really neutral and not any emotions at all. Is there a way to practice this?
Great question. Thank you. So, if you're wanting to learn more emotional literacy, understanding more of your emotions and being able to name them, you can just Google emotions and find a list of emotions. And I think that can be, it sounds really basic, but I think it can actually be a really interesting experience to start to look at different names, different words to describe emotion, and that can support you to access them within you. So that's one part of it. The other part that I'm hearing is sometimes you're feeling neutral. And sometimes we are feeling neutral. So when you're doing a practice like this, you don't need to make emotions happen. Sometimes there's a neutrality. Often this happens in meditation because if we're used to meditating anyway, we can have this kind of connotation or association between meditation and calmness. And so the act of meditating can bring on this kind of neutral, content emotion. And what if we welcome that? Can you welcome that neutral emotion just as it is? Or if it's the absence of emotion, can you notice and sense what it feels like to have an absence of emotion? So that association can be part of why we sometimes feel neutral when we're doing a practice like this. There's also something like, this is a paradox. When we're willing to welcome our emotion, or we're willing to notice our thoughts, which is something more commonly we do in meditation, the thoughts go away and the emotions settle down. Just the act of being willing to be present with our internal experience paradoxically has the effect of it calming. I mean, not always, of course, but this can happen. And this can be confusing. When I'm not trying to feel my emotions, bam, they all come up and hit me at the face. When I'm ready to meet them, they disappear, and I'm ready to do the work. Where are they? But this can be what happened when we go seeking them. When we have a willingness to be present with our experience, our emotions, they kind of feel seen and heard, and then they can, then they kind of settle down. So this is the paradox of acceptance and willingness to be present with them.
Denise is saying, yes, I have Googled lists to notice differences. Thank you. Your answers are good insights. I did not think about the paradox. Very good. And Anna is saying, I didn't really feel an emotion come up, but I felt a pain in my right pec muscle shoulder. Is pain an emotion? I want to see it also as a messenger, but I can't figure out what the message is.
So, I mean, I wouldn't describe pain as an emotion, but I would definitely say pain is a messenger. And pain is a really interesting sensation to move towards rather than away from. Pain is something that, we label as pain, and often because it feels uncomfortable, like that's almost the definition of pain, right? And so we try to turn away from it, but it can be a really interesting experience to turn towards pain and be curious about it, and notice where it is in the body, but also the size of it. Is it small? Is it big? Is it round? Is it square? What does it feel like? Is it squishy? Is it hard? Is it stagnant? Is it pulsating? Is it like really dense, or is it more opaque? It can be really interesting to explore the quality of pain. And yeah, pain comes as a messenger for sure. I invite you to be curious about pain and drop the label pain, and be curious about the sensation of it.
Thank you. Michaela says, in what I've learned about emotions, I learned that they are always caused by thoughts. So my effort has been often on getting rid of my thoughts. So what is your opinion on what emotions are caused by? And is it important to deal with what the emotions are caused by, or why is it so important to just focus on the emotion regardless of the cause? Hope this makes sense.
Yeah, and so the cognitive behavioral model says that our emotions are caused by our thoughts, and therefore we need to change our thoughts. I don't know about you, but when I try to change my thoughts, it never works. This is the whole basis of CBT, but my experience is that it's not particularly effective. So thoughts definitely can affect our emotions 100%. But I don't believe that's the only reason we feel that emotions come. So thoughts are a component of it, but I don't believe, I mean, I don't know, you try it out for yourself and see how this feels for you. For me, thoughts can come before an emotion, so I have a thought and an emotion follows. Sometimes it can be the other way around. If I have an emotion, then certain thoughts will arise, and we're understanding more and more that we have this brain here, but we also have a brain in our gut, and our moods can be really affected by the nutrition that we eat. For example, we know that sleep really affects our mood. So sleep, that's not affected by thought per se, but if we're sleep deprived, we're going to feel a certain way, and then as a result, we'll have certain thoughts around that probably act as a feedback loop around that. So definitely thoughts play into our emotional state, and maybe that's one of the messages. I need to look at this thought. This in CBT, cognitive behavior therapy, they look at core beliefs. Maybe there's a core belief that I need to look at. And that can be really powerful. But my suggestion is that that's not the only cause of emotion.
Beautiful, thank you. Those were the questions. I think if you ask also what this is, did this exercise also bring? I could notice, because I closed my eyes and I was sitting here with the camera on, and I felt uncomfortable at first, because I think I'm the moderator and everyone can see my eyes being closed. But I think, it's also a powerful message just to sit there and be vulnerable. And I started it, and so I felt vulnerable, fragile, and it disappeared throughout. And I felt powerful at the end. So it is really, really a powerful exercise. So thank you for that.
Oh, and thank you so much for participating in it. I know it's this thing between you're the moderator, and at the same time you're trying this out. So I want to celebrate you for doing that. And how vulnerable it can be to close your eyes when other people are watching, especially when you don't know if people are watching or not. And yet you did it anyway. And you were able to be with whatever arose. And this curious thing happened that kind of fits in with what we were talking about before. When you're not always, but oftentimes, when you're willing to be present with your emotion, especially these uncomfortable ones, they move on. We often feel like, if I don't try to change this, I'm going to get stuck in it. It's going to be here forever. I'm going to feel this uncomfortableness forever if I don't get on Instagram or get drunk or something like that, distract myself from it. But actually, just like you so beautifully described here, oftentimes it moves on. And interestingly for you, this kind of sense of, was it courage that you said, confidence that you said arose as in its absence?
Absolutely. I think that is the most powerful lesson somehow, that they disappear.
But here's the thing. That this is true. And if you do this practice to try to get rid of your emotions, then it just becomes another fancy way to get rid of your emotions, and it will stop working. Yeah. So again, here's another paradox. Can you do this with the intention of not trying to get rid of them, but be present with them and be present with your emotional experience just as it is, to listen, to sense it, and to listen to the messenger, not as a kind of fancy way to try to get rid of them.
That is true. Beautiful words. Well, thank you for this lecture and this powerful lesson also, because I'm going to take this with me, and I hope the attendees will too.
Amazing. Thank you so
Normally,
much
I
for
always
having me.
say, you're very welcome. And normally I say I have a big bunch of flowers to give you to thank you for this lecture. But
Thank you.
here it is. And I hope next time we will be able to meet in person. It would be wonderful to see you live and
I would love
and to
that.
have this conference live also. So
Wouldn't that be a
thanks a lot.
delight? Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And thanks for the attendees to be part of this too. And I hope to see you soon.
Great.
Enjoy your
See you
day.
in the Netherlands. Bye.
Bye. Bye.